In episode 117 of the GolfRules Questions Podcast, Stuart chats with former touring professional Nick O'Hearn, who reached an official world golf ranking of 16. Nick briefly chats about his 2 victories against Tiger Woods in individual match play, and then Stuart throws some rapid-fire questions at him about his golfing career. Nick talks about his experience with the rules, with referees, and provides his biggest tip to aspiring referees on how to deal with players. Stuart then finishes with the latest GRQOTW.
So whether you're in your car or going for a walk, enjoy this episode of the GolfRules Questions Podcast.
Oh, you see referee David Blake there. He's obviously talking to one of the rules officials up by the green.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 117 of the GolfRules Questions Podcast. My name is Stuart McPhee. It's my pleasure to be here with you wherever you are, maybe listening around the world. It's great to have your company, and we thank you for your ongoing support. I'm on my own today, but I do have a special guest joining us very, very shortly, who I'll introduce shortly. But before we get to him, we need to answer the GolfRules question of the week for episode 116. The GRQOTW for 116 was as follows. Danny, the D-grade golfer, is playing a stroke round at Wombat Hills. Danny makes her 6th stroke from the putting green on the first hole, and the ball comes to rest only 5 centimetres or 2 inches from the hole. Thinking she is playing Stableford and frustrated that she's going to score 0 points on the first hole, she turns her putter upside down and knocks the ball into the hole using the grip end of the putter. Andy, the average golfer, reminds Danny that she is playing stroke and not Stableford. With Andy's excellent rules knowledge assisting her and knowing she has not made a legal stroke, Danny replaces her ball back 5 centimetres from the hole and puts the ball in the hole correctly. She asks Andy to put an 8 for her hole score, 7 strokes, and 1 penalty stroke for causing her ball to move. Before submitting her scorecard, she asks you if 8 is correct, as she is not sure about the penalty stroke. What is her hole score for the first hole? Well, in this particular case, her hole score ends up being a 9. She was sitting on 6. She's then turned her club upside down and made a stroke at the ball, in that she intended to hit the ball and head it towards the hole with the intent of holing that out. She did in fact hole that out. However, it is an illegal stroke because you are required. The definition of a stroke is the forward movement of the club made to strike the ball. A stroke is made by fairly striking at a ball with the head of a club. You must fairly strike at the ball with any part of the head of the club, such that there is only momentary contact between the club and the ball, and you must not push, scrape, or scoop the ball. So if you make a stroke in breach of that rule, the stroke does count, right? So her hitting it with the grip end of her putter actually does count, but she does get the general penalty. She does have 2 strokes added, 2 penalty strokes added. So that hit with the grip end of the putter was her 7th stroke. That stroke counts. The ball is now holed, but she does have the general penalty added. She will have a 9 for that hole. Rule 6.5, Rule 6 is all about playing the hole. Rule 6.5 says if a player does not know that they have completed a hole and attempts to continue play of the hole, the player's further play is not considered to be practiced, nor do they get a penalty for playing another ball, including a wrong ball. So the fact that Danny picked the ball back up, put it on the ground on the green, and hit it again, all that's meaningless, completely irrelevant. As soon as she made that illegal stroke and the ball was holed, that hole is over. She's had 7 strokes plus the general penalty. So she scores 9 for the first hole at Wombat Hills. Well, as I mentioned, I'm thrilled today to have a guest along for episode 117 of the GolfRules Questions Podcast. His name is Mr. Nick O'Hearn. Nick, it is great to have your company. Welcome to the GolfRules Questions Podcast.
Thanks, Stuart. Looking forward to this chat. It's always an interesting chat, usually with rules officials on the course. Now we get to do it off course.
Yeah, I'm sure you've had some interesting conversations with those people, and I would love to get into into depth maybe about some of those experiences you've had. Before we do that, I think it's obviously very important to introduce you. Now, most golfers in Australia will know who you are, but we do have an audience that's far and wide, and we're very fortunate to have listeners all around the world, because we know they write into us and say hello, which is very nice, and we do appreciate them. And for those who don't know as much about you as probably most Australians do, Nick turned professional in 1994 and played on the world's major tours for the next 2 decades, spending several years in the top 50 of the official golf world rankings and reaching a career high of 16th in the world. Nick represented the international team at 2 Presidents' Cups in 2005 and 7 and represented Australia at 2 World Cups. He consistently performed well on the PGA Tour, often finishing in the top 10. For several years in the mid-2000s, he was playing regularly in all of the majors with a best finish of tied for 6th in the 2006 US Open, only 3 shots behind the winner, fellow Australian Jeff Ogilvy. So there's an insight. So we've got a man here today. We're very fortunate to have a man with a wealth of golfing experience at the highest level. And so, Nick, again, thank you very much for taking some time to speak with us.
No problem.
So you know that bio is not complete. And I wanted to ask you about one other thing in your bio. You would have played a bit of match play in your time. Obviously, most golfers play stroke play. Have you ever played Tiger Woods in a match?
Yeah, a couple of times. Actually, 3 times, weirdly. Once at the President's Cup in a alternate shot format. I was partnering KJ Choi against him and Charles Howell III at the President's Cup.
Yep.
So that was in 2007, but probably what I'm more recognised for is the individual matches I had against him at the World Golf Match Play. So played him twice and managed to beat him twice as well, which no one's ever done. People have done it once, but never twice.
Now, I just could not have this chat with you without bringing that up. I mean, that is incredible. I'm not going to tell you nothing you've heard before, haven't heard before. It just must be so proud and such an incredible thing to have that no one can take away from you. Go on, sorry.
Yeah. I was going to say, trust me, I'm always happy to talk about it.
Do you think about, you're very similar, I think we're only a month apart in age, without wishing our time away, one day in the future, there'll be a grandchild on your knee and you're going to give this story about, you must be looking forward to that as well.
And they'll probably go, who? No, I don't think so.
Do you mind just spending a minute talking about, pick one of those, not the foursomes, but either of those individual matches, and did you just say to him afterwards, better luck next time, or just practice a bit more? Or did you, what did you say to him? What was that experience like?
Well, people often ask me, how did you do it, firstly? And I always say, well, I found his weakness. You see, he doesn't like short-hitting left-handed Australians. So that's his kryptonite, as it turns out. But no, it was very interesting. The first time, 2005, I just had a plan to get ahead early and try not to get behind, because up until that point, he'd only ever, I think in the majors, he'd only ever won a major where he'd been leading or tied for the lead going into the final round. He'd never won coming from behind, and I was sort of treating this like the final round of a major. And I thought, well, if I get behind him, I'm kind of done. He's the ultimate front runner. So the first match, I got ahead early, right where I wanted to be, and just played beautifully the whole day. Might have been 5 or 6 under. And ended up winning 3-1. And then the second time was an interesting one, because it was a couple of years later, and he was trying to break Byron Nelson's record at the time of most tournament wins consecutively. Byron won 11 in a row back in 1945. Unbelievable record. And I think heading into the match play, Tiger had won the previous 7. So he was going for 8 in a row, and my caddy and I were probably the only 2 people on that golf course that wanted me to win that day. So it was a very interesting day out there in Tucson, Arizona. But again, I got ahead early, played nicely. He made a big charge coming back to me, and I ended up getting him on the 20th hole. We went into extra holes. So in two matches I played him, I've never trailed him. And weirdly, that second time, the next match was a quarterfinal, and I walked into the locker room after the match, and there were 7 other guys sitting there going, thank you.
Oh.
So, Yeah,
Wow.
it was a fun time, and looking back on it, was pretty cool. At the time, you just think, well, okay, I've just got
It's
to
golf.
get ready for my next match.
Yeah.
I wish it was in the final, but it wasn't, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So,
but obviously, soon after that, you look back, whenever perhaps you got knocked out, you look back and go, geez, I've had a pretty good week. Like, I've just knocked him off. Yeah.
It was pretty cool, yeah. I mean, I was looking forward to it. And strangely, that President's Cup 2007 was after the second time I'd beaten him, because it was later in the year. And we were playing, where were we? We were up in Montreal. That's right. We were in Montreal up in Canada. And going into the singles, the US were just crushing us, the internationals. They were just pulverising us. So Gary Player, my captain, had said, hey, Nick, do you want Tiger? And I said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the third time would be fun. But as it turned out, when they were doing the pairings for the singles, Jack Nicklaus, the US captain, and Gary got together and said, well, look, we're probably going to win, Jack said. I mean, and Gary agreed because they had such a lead. He said, why don't we get Mike Weir, the Canadian, to play Tiger just so the home fans can rally around it. So, and as it turned out, Mike beat him as well. So there you go, another short-hitting left-hander. So maybe that theory holds true. Yeah.
We'll just finish on this quick question. May I assume for most of those two matches, you were hitting your second shots first? You were always away after the drive?
Always.
Yeah. And that probably helped a little, I guess.
Well, I found that as a strength in match play, weirdly. I mean, I was 30 or 40 metres behind him, which isn't ideal, but typically I was one of the shortest hitters on tour, so I was always playing my approach shots in before my opponents. And in match play, I think that's an advantage, because you can apply the pressure. As long as you hit good shots.
Hitting
if you don't
well,
hit good shots, it doesn't matter. But,
right.
Yeah, I used to wear opponents down, so it was a lot of fun.
That's just incredible. I mean, that's just fantastic, and thank you for sharing that with us. So obviously we're here to talk about some rules, and we'll get to that in just a moment. I wanted to hit you up before we started with some rapid fire questions. Now, I haven't prepared you with any of these questions, but I know you'll handle them with aplomb. They're all just golf, just real quick responses if you can. I've got about 10 of them, just rapid fire questions about some golfing things. Firstly, you mentioned short hitting left-handers. You do play left-handed. How well do you play right-handed?
I recently got my handicap right-handed. I always wanted to have a right-handed handicap because I putt right-handed these days, weirdly. I used a broomstick putter my whole career. This is not a rapid-fire answer, unfortunately, but I'll explain this one.
Yeah.
I used a broomstick putter left-handed my whole career, but when they brought the anchoring ban in, one of your rules, I didn't like unanchoring just because it felt very strange, and I ended up playing 9 holes one day right-handed for a bit of fun. And I had 14 putts for 9 holes, and I thought, wow, this is interesting. And the more I thought about it, it made sense to me because I throw a ball right, I right hand. Everything I do one hand is right hand. Everything I do two hands is left hand. So if I was to roll the ball to the hole, I'd do it with my right hand, not my left.
Wow.
So putting from that side feels very, very comfortable. And from that, I do my own podcast that you came on. You come on every now and then, as you know, Stuart, talk birdie to me. And Mark Allen, my co-host, was ribbing me or whatever about playing right or putting right-handed, and we came up with the idea I should get my right-handed handicap. But I couldn't, and this is another strange rule of the game. I couldn't do it under my own name because I wasn't allowed to have two. I'm not allowed to have two handicaps. And Golf Australia, the governing body, I went to them and they said, no, you can't. And I said, why not? And they said, well, what's from stopping you from playing left-handed if you've entered the comp as a right-hander?
Right.
I said, well, probably the same thing that's stopping me from kicking a ball out from underneath the bush. It's, the etiquette of the game. I'm not going to... But anyway, they didn't agree with that, obviously. So maybe there's a rule you could change.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting a right-handed handicap under the name Nick O'Who.
I have heard you mention on your podcast. Yeah, that's very funny.
And I play for 9. So there you go. That's
wow, that is incredible.
Yeah,
wow,
probably a bit low. I think I should be higher.
How many holes in one have you had?
I've had 3 in tournaments. 3, all in California, all with a 6-iron, all within a year.
No way.
Yeah, one was at Torrey Pines, and then one at Pebble Beach, and one at Monterey. So
all with the same club.
Monterey and yeah, it was really weird. Whenever I pulled the 6-iron in California, I thought, wow, this could be close.
That's great. Your best round ever, not necessarily net score, just the one you've looked back on and go, yeah, that was just Unbelievable.
Probably 63, 9 under I shot at the Australian PGA in 2006. It was just like throwing darts that day. It was, and I missed a few putts coming in too, so it was pretty scary.
I know you do a lot of coaching. You do your masterclass with the podcast. What do you think is a simple thing, one thing that an 18 handicapper can do to improve their game?
Oh, take one more club. Most people think they hit the ball further than they do. They remember that flush shot, but out of how many, if you give an 18 handicapper 10 swings with a 7-iron, they might hit 3 or 4 really solid. So in that case, probably should use a 6-iron. But there's a variety of things, but yeah, take an extra club.
That's nice. Yeah, it's very cool. What was your most memorable moment in golf?
Most memorable moment? Probably the 2006 Australian PGA win when I hold a bunker shot on the 4th playoff hole to win. So that was pretty cool.
Fantastic. Do you have a swing thought?
No, I have a swing feel. I go between these things. I think you should do all your thinking behind the ball, not over the ball. Then you're more into the feeling, the sensory part of the game. So I feel my turn. I don't think about my turn. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, nice. What is the strongest and weakest part of your game?
Well, nowadays or in my tour days?
What do you mean, like?
Yeah, okay.
It's obviously changed.
Yeah, probably my short game was my strongest part. Could get it up and down from anywhere. That was always pretty cool, and maybe my mental side as well. I was pretty strong there. That's 2 things, I suppose. The weakest part was my length. I really struggled to hit a long iron high and 200 metres. I'd have to get the hybrid or the fairway wood out. So on some courses, I just couldn't compete.
Understood. What would you say is the best golf course or your favourite you've ever played?
The old course at St Andrews.
Okay.
Just love it. Changes every time.
I'm guessing the answer to this question we only got a few more to go, might be the 6-iron. What's your favourite club?
Yeah, it could be the 6-iron. I love my driver. I've been a ping player my whole life, and every time they bring out a new one, it's pretty good. But driving accuracy was my biggest, one of my biggest strengths as well, and I love hitting driver. But it's good fun too.
2 more to go. I don't know if professional golfers have people they idolise, or whether they're prepared to admit that once they have great established careers themselves. But did you ever have a favourite golfer?
Oh yeah, Jack Nicklaus. He was my idol, and was fortunate to meet him at the President's Cup and play his tournament, the Memorial, every year, and had some good conversations with Jack. He was fantastic.
And do you have a funniest golfing moment in your career?
Funniest? Oh gosh.
Just something that cracks you up. That's something that's happened that was just silly, or.
Yeah. Well, I remember playing. A good buddy of mine, Soren Keltsen, he's still playing the DP World Tour. Many years ago, probably maybe my rookie year or something over there. He was playing, and his caddy had just had enough of him, dropped the bag, and walked off. And we couldn't stop laughing because it was just comical. But in the end, he actually came back and picked it up and said, "No, the caddy's nickname was Ferret," and he said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'll finish the round, but then we're done." So, sure enough, they were back out together the next week. So it was quite funny.
Did the player actually have to carry his own clubs for any period of time, or was it all over?
Probably about 20 metres or something, and then the caddy came back. So it wasn't too bad.
Wasn't 3 holes or anything.
No.
Well, Nick, thank you for that. That was just, as I said, I didn't prepare you for that. I just wanted some quick rapid fire. People will love hearing that sort of stuff, from a golfer of your standing and with as much experience you have. But of course, we're here to talk about the rules of golf, just generally speaking, and clearly from a player's perspective. I think it's an interesting thing about the rules in our game is the fact that, it's, for the most part, it's self-officiating. Maybe you go and play at the Open and every group has a walking referee perhaps, but that's not common. And it is self-officiating. You mentioned talking about, kicking a ball out from under a tree, where this large playing field, and we don't, like any other sport, we don't have these referees and officials everywhere with a whistle, So it does pose an interesting, I think, situation for golfers. So I guess my first question is, thinking back to your days growing up in Perth, I assume at Mount Lawley and the like, did you, knowing you were going to be an elite amateur, you clearly had talent and you were going to, get a certain distance in your golfing career, Was there a pathway there where you actually learnt about rules a little bit and got a little bit of education on it?
Not really from memory. I mean, weirdly, I was not a very good amateur. The lowest handicap I got down to was 2, so I wasn't in any state teams or anything. I was better at baseball, funnily enough, than golf. But no, we used to have these junior tournaments called the Graham Marsh Junior Golf Foundation. They run these tournaments every school holidays, and you kind of learnt the rules as you went along there, and as you played. But there was no real, hey. Everyone you would get a rule book, but it was up to you to read it, obviously. I started learning more about the rules when I did my traineeship to become a professional golfer, because you had to know more about the rules there because they tested you on it.
Yeah, okay. So it wasn't so much in the elite amateur game. I know you said it wasn't as good as maybe I expected it to be, but it was more once you started that formal pathway of I'm going to be a professional, then there was a bit more education. I think it is interesting that so many people do pick it up as they go. And one of your first few rounds, you may have done something in a bunker, and someone goes, "You can't do that," or "Make sure you do that instead," or "This is not how you mark your ball," or something like that. Given how much golf you did play in those early days, is there a moment when you go, "Oh, I didn't know about that rule. I wish I knew about that 5 years ago"? That's so important. Is there something that sticks out?
I'd probably say early on. Maybe an unplayable lie I think I had once. I knew, I know you can go 2 club lengths to the side, but I didn't know about the rule where you could walk all the way back, and I probably would have benefited that as a junior a couple of times, I'm sure. But then when you play with someone and it just so happens, I'm going to take an unplayable, and someone said, "Oh, are you going to go as far back or are you going to go to the side?" And I said, "What do you mean as far back?"
Yeah.
Said, well, that's part of the rule. Oh, okay. So yeah, one of those things you just learn as you go. So
The interesting thing about the unplayable, I think, me playing at club level as well, is that how often, if you're going to take an unplayable, people don't even think about going back on the line. Their immediate thought is, right, on which way, left or right, to go 2 club lengths, which is going to be the best. Yeah. And they don't even think about, if I go back there 20 metres, I can get back onto the teeing area of another hole, perfect grass, and I can drop and hit. It's like not even in their thought process.
Yeah, or even just replaying the previous shot might be better as well.
Exactly. So, giving up a lot of distance in that, possibly in that case. But of course, stroke and distance is the third option. Even now today, I know you still play today. Are there any rules you don't like?
I don't like. Probably the anchoring ban. No, I'm kidding. No, I don't mind that anchoring ban. I think looking back, probably you shouldn't be able to anchor against your body. So, but it was part of the rules back then. It's not there's rules that I don't like. It's just that I find rules aren't enforced as much. And as far as what I mean by that is on the tour, for instance, the whole slow play thing. You see players taking quite a long time, and I would love for players to be be penalised a stroke a little quicker than what probably they do. They give them a warning. I don't know how many warnings it is, and then it's a stroke, whereas it almost should be straight away, I think. And that would just speed up play, because pace of play is such a big thing, especially on the TV.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, so many of it's all a product, isn't it? They're delivering a product to the fans, and that product needs to be good, the best they can make it. And as you say, pace of play sometimes, when someone, unfortunately, they can take 90 seconds to 2 minutes to make a stroke, and it doesn't make for great TV.
No, and I think speed in sport, the quicker you're able to do something is a skill. You look at other sports, and Tom Brady in the NFL, he was perhaps not physically one of the best quarterbacks, but he had the quickest mind, and that was what made him great. And it was a skill. And I think in golf, making good decisions quickly should be part of the game.
Wouldn't you think that even at the amateur level, the longer a player who plays off 15 or 18 stands over the ball, the longer they stand over the ball, the worse off they're going to be? Yeah,
it's very rare people can take a long time and then not dumb it down, but get it down to one final solution, and then they're happy to go. There are very few players can do that. I mean, Jack Nicklaus was like that. Jordan Spieth's a bit like that. Whereas most other people and all these other options come into their mind, and then it just gets worse and worse. So,
Are there any rules, and again, incredible amount of experience playing golf, are there any rules you're still a bit confused by?
I suppose there's always that, TIO relief, or things like that, when there's grandstands or line of sight, and is it is it nearest point club length and then the next club length, or is it within? Yeah, those sorts of things always confuse me over the years, and I probably should have known it, but and I probably did at the time. But looking now, I go, do they drop in the first club length or the second? I could never remember, So there's just little things like that, but most of the rules pretty much make sense because they are common sense.
Is that when you take the opportunity to stick your hand up and call to your caddy and say, can you get some your help players and your caddies, and yelling out to someone to...
Yeah. Well, the thing about when you're playing on tour is if you do make a mistake, it's costing you a stroke, it's costing you points, money, whatever it is. So officials are there for a reason. So you go, yep, in any doubt, just call for a ruling. And that's what all the guys do and girls do on tour. And it makes sense because it can, be the difference between having a job one year and not having it. So.
There couldn't be any exceptions to that approach, surely. Everyone must think that. I'm not going to take a risk. Just zero,
Yeah, absolutely. Although, didn't Rory get penalised a while ago for taking a wrong drop or something like that, an unplayable? I can't remember what he did, but whereas he probably should have called for a ruling, but he never did. So I'll have to look into that one.
Yes, I'll do the same. How, after a round, whether you shot 76 or 66, and you go into the locker room, the other guys are there, some are in happy moods, I'm guessing some not so happy. Did you ever see a player open a rule book in front of you and just go, I'm just going to flick through this for 5-10 minutes?
Never. Never. I mean, I always had one in my bag. I made sure I carried one on tour with me, just in case something came up and I could quickly check, but it was once a year I might get it out.
Right.
Yeah, because I always found the rules books it's pretty hard to find sometimes the right rule you're after, and the language and the interpretation is part of it and so on.
Yeah, and I've got mine here, and it's over 500 pages, this official guide, and I think the key to navigating the book is actually knowing where to look. Otherwise, you could spend the first 2 minutes going, I've got to find the right section.
Yes.
Which is important for us to know the rule numbers, and we know that rule 9 is this, and we know 11 is this, because we can actually quite quickly, if we need to, and it's not something we want to do openly in front of players. Hang on a second, Nick, just give me a second. I'll get this big book open. And take 5 minutes to look through the book, that's for sure. Okay, so getting to rulings, and again, you've obviously had your fair share over the years. Did you ever receive any rulings that just made zero sense to you, or you thought, this is just wrong? I don't agree with this, it's just unfair.
No, I can't remember any offhand. I will say that. I had a couple of ones where my playing partner didn't agree, but in a way I was thinking, am I getting away with something here or am I not? And it happened to me at the PGA Championship in, I think we were playing, where was it? It was either Oak Hill or Bolter's Roll or somewhere like that. I can't remember which golf course, but they had two fairways side by side and just thick rough in between, no trees or anything. And I was in just deep rough, and I took my stance going towards the hole that I was going towards, and it was just, I don't think I could get the ball back onto the fairway from there, so I thought, well, I'm going to play up the other fairway. But when I took my stance there, I noticed my foot under the grass. I didn't realize it was there. There was a sprinkler head underneath me. And I called Miguel Angel Jimenez, the Spanish golfer over, and I said, hey, Miguel, I've got this little sprinkler head here. And he goes, nah, you got to play this way. And I said, I'm going to call for a ruling. So I called for a ruling and I explained everything to the referee, and he goes, yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, you're trying to get it out there, and I know the hole's there, but you want to go there? And he gave me free relief, and Miguel was not happy. But yeah, it turned out to be no advantage. I still made bogey, or I don't think I made double, but it was a weird one, and I could understand why Miguel would think that, but I thought I may as well ask. So maybe he just felt sorry for me. I don't know, but I'm sure he followed the rules, so I don't know.
Yeah,
So
I've had some situations myself in the last year or two, and I'm not going to go through them in any great detail, but one might have been, no one saw going to the penalty area, but we need to establish a certain standard of known or virtually certain. We need to know 95% or more it's in the water, it's in the penalty area. And so then we think about what's the surrounding area. How likely is it to be outside the penalty area? And when there's bare grass or no grass and nothing outside and we can't find it, then we go, well, pretty good chance it's in there. I've had a few situations I can think of when the other players get very active. They get very actively involved in the discussion to the point of you can't be serious. There's no way, that's not virtually certain. Yeah. I've had one player who I definitely will not mention his name who said, I'm pretty sure I heard it hit that tree and go left, away from the penalty area, trying to get me to think, well, it's definitely not in the penalty area then. Right. And I thought, why would he say that? Well, he's competing against that guy. Maybe he's trying to make the cut and they're right next to it. They're same score as each other and he's just trying to get ahead of him. And maybe he thought that's unfair, that he's going to take, get a drop from that sprinkler head, and I'm competing against this guy.
Yeah, true. Maybe. I mean, 99% of the guys are pretty comfortable usually going, that seems reasonable. Every now and then, I mean, I've had one where I know that the ball's cut sooner and this guy's trying to get a drop 50 metres up there, and I'll go, hang on, no, you can't take, it didn't go in up there. I thought it went back there. So if you want to compromise and we'll go halfway, well, let's do it that way. And then if they still disagree, well, that's when I call the official in or something like that. But that rarely happens. Most guys are pretty good.
But if I may, you have definitely at least once called in an official for play of another player, thinking this is just, I don't think this is right. Yeah. And would that happen more often? Would that happen quite often? Or not often, but...
No, very rarely. I mean, when you're hitting balls into a hazard, generally the players all come to some sort of agreement. We go, okay, that's probably where it crossed. Every now and then it might be, and the person hitting the ball usually goes, well, I think it was a bit further. And if the other two guys go, no, well, then obviously we compromise and make sure it's fair for everyone, because you got to protect the rest of the field, and that's what it's all about.
I remember two very situations, both at the Players' Championship. One this year with Rory McIlroy and Spieth and those and that took way too long to resolve that. And maybe a year or two on the 16th at the Players, with, I think it was Berger, who's cut one right into the water, and massive disagreement with Hovland, I think was one of the players in that situation. Yeah. And it's unfortunate when it gets to that, but clearly those other players are there as a check and balance. They're the people to protect the rest of the field, to speak up and go, that's no way you cross there. So they're really protecting the field as well as themselves. They're protecting not 153 players, possibly.
That's it.
Have you had any awkward situations with referees? Maybe things got a little bit heated, or probably doesn't not in your DNA, but has it?
No, well, I thought you might have given me relief this past year at the Collegial Invitational when I lost the ball. No, I'm kidding. We were outside the 3 minutes, so it was fair call.
You think I enjoyed that for a second?
No, I know. It's just weird how I found it just after. So,
but 8 seconds afterwards, the 3 minutes?
It didn't matter anyway, because I was playing horrific golf. So, it never happened to me, but I mean, there is a famous story over on the European Tour from many, many years ago, and you might have heard this story before. I don't know which player it was. I've heard several names bantered about, so I'm not going to mention any names. But there was this old story. It might even be an old wives' tale, but it's a great story. And where one player has called for a ruling, and as soon as he's seen this particular rules official coming towards me, he's thinking, I'm not going to get relief here, because every now and then there's interpretation with the rules and things like that. So, and sure enough, the rules official didn't give him relief. And I won't use the language that he used. You may have heard this story, but he said, "What would happen if I called you
so and so?"
Yeah, what language do you use on this podcast? Is dickhead okay, or can you edit that out?
No, that's fine.
Okay. He said, because he used much stronger language than this. He said, what would happen if I called you a dickhead? And the rules official said, well, that would be, violating such and such, or abusing an official. I would have to impose a fine upon you. He says, okay, well, what if I think you're a dickhead? And the rules official says, well, I can't control what you think of me. I mean, that's completely up to you. And he says, well, I think you're a dickhead. I thought that was one of the best little one-liners, and the guy couldn't do a thing because he basically let him do it. So it was quite funny. That's an old story on the tour.
On tour, when you're playing regularly, is it important to see this you're a player, and you don't want to see us very often, right? But every now and again you want us to drive over and help you over. Is it important to see the same faces? is it important for consistency to see the same team, the same group of people week in, week
sure.
out? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No, I always found that, and when you have a rapport with certain officials, you can get through things quicker. And if there is a slight disagreement, you go, I know he hasn't got it against me, and look, I'm sure some officials just have a harder line and they just don't see things certain ways. And as I say, some rulings, I think there's an interpretation as part of it. So if you see the same guys, you kind of know what you're going to get, and it is what it is. You should think it should all be black and white, but there are some grey areas.
Yeah, so probably, just as you were talking then, probably the one that sticks out to me is reasonable stroke. You can be denied free relief if you're coming across and presenting an unreasonable stroke to me. I'm going to go, that's not,
Well, that was like Xander at Wells Fargo the other day when he hit it up against that fence and called for, could he get a shot through there? I mean, some guys would have gone no way in heck, but anyway, he got relief. So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where two referees could have completely opposing views, even though we're using the same rule book. I've got one final one for you. So I think I shared with you, we're very fortunate we have people all around the world listening to this podcast. Some are tour referees, which is very humbling, and we have a lot of other rules enthusiasts. For aspiring referees, people who want to step out and step into the arena, and whether it be at amateur level or professional level, what advice would you give them from a player's perspective when they approach you to help you in a situation? What advice would you give them?
I think the best thing for them to remember is the player is always right. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. No, I think I think the biggest thing for rules officials is don't take things that we say personally, because we're in the heat of battle. We're competing. We're trying to. It's a job. It's a living. So sometimes we may say things that we probably don't mean, or we're a bit upset. We might have just come off a double bogey. So you just never know what's going on. So I think be a little not understanding, but just make sure that the player doesn't have anything against you. It's just that they may be going through a bad patch or something like that. So they almost have to have a bit of a Teflon coat on, because I'm sure you've seen a lot of and heard a lot of things on the course that you probably couldn't repeat. So it's one of those things. But and at the end of the day, it's a matter of, okay, give me the ruling. Yep, got it. Let's go. Bang. Just keep pace of play moving. That's the biggest thing. It's terrible when rulings take 5-10 minutes. I think it happened at, what was it, up at Hong Kong a while back when Cam Smith and who was it? Yeah. Ben Campbell were playing along with an Asian tour player, and the ruling took like 15 minutes, and they couldn't figure it all out. So we might have had you on our podcast for that, I think.
We did, yeah. So I came on to talk about that. We didn't talk about 15. We didn't spend 15 minutes talking about it, but no, that's certainly excessive. Look, I think that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. The fact is that anything a player says, it's nothing personal.
No,
they're in the heat of the moment. They are under pressure.
Yeah,
they're trying to make a cut. They're trying to make the weekend. It's under pressure. And I remember, if I may share one more story of mine, that at the Queensland PGA Championship just in the last year, where a group was falling behind, and I was watching them. It was raining, but they were falling behind because one of the guys of the three was playing shocking.
Yeah. So many hits.
ball searches off every second tee, into penalty areas, taking drops. We knew that. But of course, I had to say to him, but the other two, I had to say, guys, just need to, if you can just pick it up a little bit, we need to close this gap. And of course, one of them let rip at me.
Yeah.
Basically saying, have you seen how that guy's playing? I know that. I'm sorry. I know. I've been watching him. I've actually helped him with a few drops. But we still need you to, So, I mean, I copped it from him. At the point, I eventually said, okay, thanks, and I smiled and I drove off. Because he was still talking at me. So it's a great point. Would he have said that to me after the round, having cooled down for an hour? Highly unlikely.
No.
Right, but right there and then, because he was frustrated too, right, because he was being held up as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. So thank you for that advice. Well, Nick, I have to say, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. I know you're a busy guy and you do a lot of stuff and coaching. Before you go, just wanted to mention to everyone else that you did mention this, you co-host the Talk Birdie to Me podcast. It's Australia's #1 golf podcast. You, with Mark Allen, obviously, you coach golfers of all levels. You do a lot of corporate and private things. You speak on, golf and your experiences and maximising talent. The mindset, you mentioned that earlier about something you're very proud of and your mental approach to the game. So you're obviously very well positioned to do all of that and offer and still contribute to our great game in this country. So, Nick, it's been great to have you on. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, thanks for the invitation, Stuart. Good stuff. And next time, give me that ruling, that going my way.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that chat with Nick. What a great guy, very easy to chat to, and I hope you enjoyed what he had to share. Obviously had a great career. Hope you enjoyed what he had to share from a player's perspective about the rules, and certainly some tips on how to best handle situations in the future when you do come across players who maybe not having the best of days. So we need to finish episode 117 with, of course, the Golf Rules question of the week, which I'll read out now, and it goes as follows. Andy, the average golfer, is playing a stroke play event at Wombat Hills. On the 12th hole, Andy hits his tee shot into the left rough. The group searches for 2 minutes and finds a ball in a bad lie. Andy identifies his ball and decides it is unplayable, so he drops it under rule 19.2 and plays it towards the putting green. When Andy arrives, he realises that it isn't his ball at all. So he returns to the area to find his original ball and does, fortunately, find it within the next 30 seconds in a playable lie. Andy plays that ball towards a putting green and holes out in 4 more strokes. Before signing and submitting his scorecard, Andy asks you for some help with his score on the 12th hole. What is Andy, the average golfer's score for the 12th hole? Well, that's it for episode 117 of the Golf Rules Questions Podcast. I hope you enjoy that. And Blakey and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.